Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Welcome back, Romeo.
Hey.
I'm Nielle, soulmates.
Nielle beat me to it. Romeo is back. We're really excited about that. Glad to have you on today's report. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump is here to discuss the jury in the case of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. Also, some of the most important criminal justice issues that you should know about. He's going to break them down. And the ACLU is suing over Oklahoma's anti-critical race theory law. That's what it's being called.
President Biden tells Democrats free community college is out of the infrastructure package. We let you know what happened today in Black history. And Marielle Bobo, editor-in-chief of Ebony Magazine, is here to discuss this year's 2021 Ebony Power 100.
Soulmates, we have that and so much more. It's our voice, it's our truth. So let's talk about it.
Good evening, Soulmates. Thank you for being here with us on this Wednesday. It is the third day of jury selection in the murder trial of Travis and Gregory McMichael and their neighbor, William Bryan. Vice News is reporting the website of Georgia's Glenn County Superior Court accidentally made suppressed evidence and documents accessible to potential jurors in the trial of the McMichaels and Bryan. The men are accused in the February 2020 killing of Ahmaud Arbery, 23 years old. The documents include details of Arbery's mental health and past criminal history, both of which a judge has already ruled inadmissible in court. The documents also include evidence where the admissibility in that evidence is still under consideration by the court. And the report also notes this evidence includes how often the McMichaels used their firearms and the Confederate flag vanity plate on Travis's truck. Now, if jury candidates see the suppressed evidence, they may become ineligible to serve on the jury.
Joining us now to discuss the trial of the three men who killed Ahmaud Arbery and some of the most important issues facing Black America is civil rights attorney Ben Crump. Welcome back to the Black Report.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here with you all.
So let's talk about the story that Brooke just read. Do you think the leaking of the files will have an impact on the trial?
Well, I'm certain that they will attempt to assassinate the character of Ahmaud Arbery, just as they did with Trayvon Martin 10 years ago. And it's eerily similar, these two cases, young Black men being killed by citizens. And so we remember in that case, they did everything in their power to distract us from Trayvon being profiled, pursued, and shot in his heart by the Neighborhood Watch volunteer. Just as I'm sure they're gonna talk about Ahmaud's past, minor criminal history, because we've seen it and we think it's completely insignificant. They're gonna talk about the fact that he had been diagnosed with some mental illnesses, which we think is relevant to some degree in the civil matter, but certainly not in the criminal matter. And we think they're going to talk about the citizen arrest laws that are antiquated, that they have on Georgia law books still. And they're going to say they were trying to make a citizen's arrest. And then they're going to say it was self-defense, because when all else fails, say we're afraid of the scary Black people. And that's what they're going to do. But none of that will distract us from this lynch mob chasing this young Black man who was simply exercising and was killed for jogging while Black, lynched in 2020.
It is such an honor to have you on our show today, Ben Crump. So a lot of people that have been watching, including myself, have noticed that a lot of the line of questioning, it's been centered around race. Do you think that you know, the focus being race, is that appropriate at this stage in the trial?
It certainly isn't, but unfortunately, we're Black in America, and we know that race is always the elephant in the room. The real question is how many Black people will make it to this jury. As we know, many of these trials end up being all white juries or majority white juries. And then the question becomes, can they relate to Ahmaud Arbery's life experiences, his culture, his background, versus how much they relate to the murderous father and son duo? Because remember, this is South Georgia. But I still believe with this video, I mean, they chased him for almost 2 miles. He was running for his life. It is asinine to tell us that it's self-defense when you chase this young man with a shotgun on the back of a truck. How can anybody believe that's self-defense?
That is so true. Attorney Ben Crump, once again, thank you for everything that you do. We definitely see what you're doing out there. And we were talking about the jury. So do you think there's going to be difficult prosecution and defense to find jurors for this trial?
You know, Romeo, and welcome back, brother.
Thank you.
Honored to be here with you. In George Floyd case in Minneapolis, Minnesota, they found a fair and impartial jury. And that was the most high-profile case in history. It was the most witnessed documentary of police excessive force and killing of a person in the history. On YouTube alone, the video was seen 300 million times. That's not to count all the other platforms where people viewed the George Floyd video, and they could find a fair and impartial jury in that trial. I think they should be able to do so also in the trial involving the death of Ahmaud Arbery. And I would add this, Romeo and Brooke and ladies, I have never seen in my life, in my entire professional career, when a black person is accused of killing a white person, nobody says, can we find a fair and impartial jury? I wonder if he can get a fair jury. No, they charge us and they convict us. Why is it different rules when the person laying dead on the ground is a black person in America?
Mr. Crump, I would be remiss if I didn't also echo my colleagues' sentiments that we are incredibly glad to be able to have you here and have your perspective specifically on such an important story that, again, we almost didn't know about. We learned about this as a nation so far after this young man had been killed. Jury selection in this has been slow, incredibly slow. And, you know, one could say maybe that has something to do with the questions being asked, the venue. And so I'm curious from your perspective, the calls for a possible change of venue. Do you think that's something that would be likely to be seen in this case?
I pray not, because we don't know what we will get. We're talking to FOXSOUL, so I feel I can say this. In Georgia, you have Atlanta, and then you have a few other pockets where you have diverse communities. Everything else is rural and very conservative. Brunswick has a demographic that has at least a fair amount of black people who are possible candidates for the jury. If you go to some other places in Georgia, you will almost be guaranteed an all-white jury that will pass judgment on the killers of Ahmaud Arbery. So my hope and belief is that we can get a fair and impartial jury there in Brunswick, Georgia, because if they don't move it to Atlanta, who knows what we'll get.
All right. Well, I want to switch it up a little bit, Attorney Crump. You talked a little bit, you mentioned George Floyd, and you and the Floyd family spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., at the White House, on Capitol Hill, talking to different lawmakers, Tim Scott, Karen Bass, Cory Booker. You were really pushing for the passage of the Justice for George Floyd bill. We know it passed in the House, and it's still sitting on the desk in the Senate. What are the next steps, or do you think that there's another avenue that we should take as far as looking at what police reform looks like in this country?
Certainly, that's a very good question, because so many people did go out and vote in the election during the pandemic with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd on their mind. And we believe when we delivered we being black people, delivered the United States Senate to the Democrats that we would get police reform that had eluded us for 58 years. The last time we had substantive police reform was during President Lyndon Baines Johnson Great Society legislation. And can you just think about how many black people been killed in those 58 years, and we still have not been able to get police reform? We thought we got close with Michael Brown and Ferguson when everybody was saying, hands up, don't shoot, but we didn't get it then. And so we thought certainly we would get it with George Floyd, but not one Republican was willing to vote for the bill and deal with this qualified immunity, not to mention the chokeholds and the no-knock warrants that was the cause for Breonna Taylor being killed in her own home. And so we are now left to executive order, which is important because President Biden can pass the executive order dealing with most things. He can't deal with qualified immunity because that has to be an act of the Congress, and the president can't make laws himself, but he can issue an executive order, which is the law of the land, as long as he is president, that has authoritative power in courts of laws all over America. Now, the other thing I would say is that it is very important that we know the Supreme Court of the United States doubled down last week on qualified immunity, and it is devastating because elections matter. And even though people say, well, it can't get much worse, well, the Republican-controlled Supreme Court showed us, oh, yes, it can, because a brother they claim was reaching for a knife and the police shot him twice in the back. And they were saying there were less intrusive measures they could have used than shooting this brother in the back when they say he was running towards a knife. I think he was 4 or 5 feet from the knife itself. And remember, these are 4 police officers. They got space, they got distance. They could have used something less intrusive, but when it's black people, they always do the most. And the United States Supreme Court said the police were just fine in shooting this brother in the back, and said qualified immunity is gonna make it even more difficult now when they kill brothers and sisters, because Issa Rae said, I can never leave out the sisters, so I'm not gonna leave out the sisters. They're killing all of us, and they are killing us again with this law of qualified immunity. So we gotta get this executive order signed by President Biden with the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and then we gotta go out and try with everything we can to see if we can get more senators, because the Republicans and Tim Scott just aren't going to do right by us.
Right. Attorney Ben Crump, for me, when I see that you've taken on a case, for some reason, I just feel like you're really going to help get down to the bottom of it. Like, it's a big deal when I see you've taken on a case and help a lot of families seek justice. And, you know, many families have been filing civil lawsuits across the country against police departments and cities due to police killings and misconduct. Now, we all know that this doesn't help bring back their loved one, but does this, you know, what can we look forward to when we talk about justice in America?
But, you know, the most profound thing happened after the killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Even though we didn't get police reform on the national level, over 150 cities in 7 states passed police reform laws. Kentucky and Virginia abolished no-knock warrants in the spirit respecting the legacy of Breonna Taylor, who we all know her name. But then you had those cities pass qualified immunity measures on the local level, saying that you do have a right to go to court. They passed measures abolishing the chokehold. They made sure that there were body camera video requirements when you had interactions with citizens, because so much of this is us being able to see what happened and not being relying on not having to just say, whatever the police narrative is, we have to take it as the gospel. And so we are seeing a lot of changes because of the activists, because of shows like Fox Soul, who are using your platform, your influence to speak truth to power for Black people who don't have that voice. And so we're making a difference, so we can never get discouraged. We always have to see the glass as half full. And our ancestors, remember when they were in the cotton fields back in slavery, they prayed for us to have a platform like Fox Soul, for us to have lawyers who can go into the courtroom and fight for us, have platforms like Ebony Magazine to be able to spread the word to say that Black Lives Matter. So we are making progress. Right. We always have to understand what Frederick Douglass said, without struggle, there can be no progress. So I don't look at the struggle as something negative. I look at it as something that we're making progress every day for our children and our children's children. So let's keep fighting the power, and let's keep making sure we speak truth of power anytime we get an opportunity to do so.
Definitely got to do that. Attorney Ben Crump joined us here on Fox Soul's Black Report. So what are your thoughts on this? The defendants of the McMichaels and Bryan are using Civil War law meant to terrorize Black people. What does that say about today's times?
It tells you that we, now more than ever, we beat Jim Crow, but now we're fighting Jim Crow Jr., Esquire, PhD. And so that means we have to be more strategic. We have to be more intellectual. We have to be more diplomatic to make sure that we can defeat the antics of the enemies of equality. And I am so confident, y'all, we're gonna win this war because we have precedent on our side. Our people overcame being defined as 3/5 of a human being when this nation was first formed. And we overcame that. We overcame the Dred Scott decision by the United States Supreme Court that said there were no rights that a Black person had that a white person was made to respect. We overcame Plessy v. Ferguson, separate but equal. And so that just makes me know whatever they throw at us today in 2021, we gonna be all right.
Mr. Crump, you just said something that I want to touch on. You gave, a bit of a list of reasons why we are seeing change today. We're seeing change already. And one of those things that we're seeing video, that's making a huge difference. We're just seeing more, right? And we are also, I'm noticing, we are seeing police body cam footage a lot sooner than maybe we have in the past. We often see you out publicly requesting that video, and then we get that video. I'm curious, just that aspect of things, the video, because, I mean, I just saw you signed on with a case today, and so it's not that this isn't still happening. You're not still having to do this work and fight this fight. I'm just curious, how much has this access to video changed your job?
I was meeting with the executives at Apple and on their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I said very direct to them, the only difference between Rodney King being brutalized in 1984 and George Floyd being brutalized and killed on May 25th, 2020 was the quality of the video. Darnella Frazier, thank God she had that iPhone, and thank God that she was able to record it. I was meeting with the Time Magazine executive board, and we were talking about a whole litany of things from George Floyd to the environmental racism with Flint, Michigan, and to me representing Henrietta Lacks family, the sister whose cells are the cornerstone of all modern medicine. And the one thing I continue to say to them, whatever influence that we have as moral people, we have to demand America to respect the value of Black people and make the Declaration of Independence real for not just white people, but for Black people, for brown people, for Native people, for all of us. We're all created equally, and we all have contributed tremendously in the past, but even more today. And that's why Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, the children of Flint, Michigan, and Henrietta Lacks, all of the epitome of Black Lives Matter. And so when they were talking about, you know, Crump, you have influence, I said the influence is made greater by going to the heart and soul of America and holding a mirror to their face and saying, look at the hypocrisy of how you treat Black people and how there are two justice systems in America. And if I have influence for showing, you know, the mirror to America face, well, I'm sure our ancestors are proud of all of us. FOXSOUL, our ancestors are looking down in heaven, being very proud that you all are speaking on important matters.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And we would like to continue this conversation with you in the near future as we all continue the pursuit of justice for Black America.
Hey, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Washington State Attorney General on Tuesday filed 2 misdemeanor criminal charges against a county sheriff stemming from his confrontation with a Black newspaper carrier in January. Pierce County Sheriff Ed Troyer faces 1 count of false reporting and 1 count of making a false statement to a civil servant for claiming to an emergency dispatcher that the carrier, Cedric Altheimer, had threatened to kill him. The charges were filed in District Court by Attorney General Bob Ferguson.
The first Black chair of Iowa's Democratic Party says he received a series of racist messages, including a lynching threat after writing an opinion piece in a local newspaper criticizing former President Donald Trump and the state Republican officials who stood with him at a recent rally in Des Moines. Ross Wilburn, who is also a state representative, reported a threatening phone and email message to local police and state investigators. The messages came after the Des Moines Register's online publication of Wilburn's op-ed on October 8th, the day before thousands of Trump supporters gathered at the Iowa State Fairgrounds for the rally. Several in the crowd carried Confederate flags. Wilburn's experience is part of an uptick in racist and threatening communications aimed at Black leaders in Iowa and across the country, according to the targets of communications and a group that monitors them.